Welcome back to Aim in Practice podcast, where I have the immense pleasure of sitting down with a diverse array of practitioners, experts, and authors. And together we delve into their unique journeys and insights, exploring this multifaceted world of wellness. I'm your host, Jess Reynolds, and today you're going to hear a conversation with Beth Shaw. Now, Beth is a wellness visionary, founder of YogaFit training systems, and host of the Make America Healthy podcast. With nearly 30 years of experience in health and wellness, Beth has dedicated her life to empowering others to take control of their health. Throughout our conversation, Beth shares her insights on the importance of holistic health practices and how they can enhance overall well-being. We dive into the specifics of how lifestyle changes and mindful practices can be used to promote healing and relaxation. Beth underscores the importance of education and personal responsibility in health, especially in a system that often prioritizes treating illness over promoting wellness, and that is a key distinction. She offers practical advice on how individuals can take charge of their own health journey. So with that, let's jump in. All right, so before we jump into today's episode, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Jane, a clinic management software and EMR. Whether you're just starting to do your research or you've been contemplating switching your software for a while now, the Jane team understands that the process, well, it can feel intimidating. That's why their goal is to provide you with all of the onboarding resources you need to make the switch as smooth as possible. Jane offers a personalized call to set up your account, a free date import, and a wide variety of online resources to get you up and running quickly. And if you need a helping hand along the way, you'll have unlimited phone, email, and chat support, which is all included with your Jane subscription. Now, I gotta tell you, I've switched EMR softwares 4 times now. We won't get into why, but I've done it. And it really can be a nightmare. But when I made the switch to Jane, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it really was the easiest transition imaginable. And I finally feel like I have a system that does all the things I need, and it's all in one place. So if you're interested in learning more, book a one-on-one demo at jane.app/switch. And if you decide to switch, don't forget to use the code AIM1MO. That's AIM, the number 1, MO. At the time of sign up to receive a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Well, Beth, thank you very much for taking the time to join me today. I'm looking forward to our conversation, and as I was doing a little bit of research and looking into all the different things that you do, I was quite pleased because there's quite a bit of overlap between the passions that you seem to have and what I'm curious about my passions as well. So if possible, I'd love to begin the same way that I always do. And this is just a little bit about your personal journey and really what led you to, in specific, what led you to your project of Make America Healthy. What's the pivotal moment that really inspired you into that particular project?
Well, I've been teaching yoga for close to 30 years now, and people always told me that I should have a radio show. Apparently, I have a soothing voice to some people. And I always wanted to get the message of health out there in a greater way than just the work that I do with YogaFit. So an opportunity came my way with a network that I was approached by to do Make America Healthy, and I jumped at the opportunity.
Amazing, amazing. So what is I mean, the title itself is pretty obvious and self-explanatory, but what's the underlying motivation? What's the goal you have with Make America Healthy?
The goal that I have with Make America Healthy is to empower and inspire and educate people to take more control of their own physical and mental health.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Now, what I'm curious about is the obstacles, interestingly enough. So I'm a practitioner. Many of my listeners are practitioners. I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. I see a lot of clients. Most of my listeners do. And this empowerment thing is such a big part of the industry, right? Trying to teach our clients that what we do in the treatment room, super important, but it's a relatively small percentage of their overall journey to wellness. So helping people feel empowered and helping people actually take the embody the sovereignty over their own well-being, I found it to be quite challenging. So how about you in your exploration of this world of helping people understand that they really can make the choices? What are some obstacles that you've encountered?
Well, unfortunately, I believe, at least here in the US, we've been brainwashed well, let me back up. First of all, we're not educated to take control of our own physical health. And everything starts with education. I've run an education company, YogaFit Training Systems, for, a quarter of a century. And education is so important, especially for young people. I was fortunate. I grew up with a mother that was, of Hungarian immigrants, uh, healthy cooking. So I had a good role model, but a lot of people don't.
Mhm.
I really say if we cared about our citizens, we would educate them from an early age on how to eat clean, the importance of exercise. Instead, we see school fitness programs being cut left and right, even at the college level. And so we have a lack of education in this country because, I believe we profit on the sick and the uneducated. And so, to educate and empower people would be very contraindicated to the
Mhm.
system. And then, people not knowing how to lead a healthy life, or maybe knowing and just not doing it. Because we could probably walk out in the street right now and ask anybody, how do you lose weight? And they would probably say, eat less, move more. But, we've got a 54% obesity rate right now. And the numbers that are coming up by 2030 are really staggering as to how many people will be obese. So people get sick because they're not taking care of themselves. They go to the doctor and they expect a magic pill to take care of everything. And I believe that Western medicine is much more focused on the problem than the solution and root cause. As a doctor of Chinese medicine, I'm sure you would agree. So it's a system that's not set up for anyone to succeed. But with things like YouTube University and podcasts, information is free, and we can all educate ourselves. So my goal with Make America Healthy is just to educate people on a variety of topics, whether it's hormone health, intermittent fasting, what to do if you have a brain injury,
Mhm.
mental health hacks, so much more. We've done topics on more things than I can even count. We're rounding up around 100 shows right now. So I just love sharing. I love teaching. I love sharing information. I love learning. And every time I do a show, I get to learn something new.
Yeah, that's really one of the best parts of this whole podcasting gig, isn't
Yeah.
it? I'm curious of the directions that one can take in this world. Of course, they're nearly infinite. What's currently piqued your interest? What's the area that you're really honing in on as far as helping people with their own health and well-being?
Well, lately, and I use myself as a guinea pig for everything. And if you had asked me this question a year ago or 6 months ago, I probably would have said psychedelic medicine has really piqued my interest. But now I'm actually going to say advanced blood tests to see uh, things like food sensitivities, the optimization of supplementation that people might be taking. I recently did a blood test, and things that I thought I was eating that were healthy, like arugula and carrots, apparently I'm moderately sensitive to. So I've had to rework my whole healthy living
Yeah.
strategy. But I'm very curious about advanced biomarkers and baseline testing and the interplay of everything. And of course, I'm a bit obsessed with the microbiome right now, also.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, with these categories, you've, from the sounds of it and from what I understand about you, you've dedicated your life to your own health, wellness, and well-being, as well as educating others and helping them with their own health and well-being. So when I hear things like the blood markers, love it. I'm 100% on board. How do you find making these transitions? Like if you've been really like arugula and carrots, they've been part of your life for a long time, maybe, right? How do you go about taking in this information, learning that, okay, I identify as this healthy person. Turns out there's this behavior I've been doing that isn't optimal for my health. How does making that transition unfold for you?
Well, for me, it's recently been a practice of elimination more than
Okay.
anything else, and a radical departure for how I usually cook. I cook a lot, I'm part Asian, so I make a lot of Asian food, and my stepmother was Italian, so I make a lot of Italian food, and now I've had to eliminate things like jalapenos, and I make a lot of Mexican food too. So it's radically changed the way that I cook. It's simplified the way that I shop. It's, there used to be those mono diets that people would do where they would like eat brown rice for a week.
Mhm.
Um, it's not necessarily a mono diet, but it's been a little bit of an inconvenience. I am trying it out though because I've been working on my microbiome for over a year now, and it's
Mhm.
been getting better. Um, I recently took a biome test. I haven't gotten the results back yet, but I love baseline testing. I love testing of any kind. I think, and you can't fix what you don't know.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and then because I'm running online groups through YogaFit, like Yoga Lean, weight loss, and weight management groups, I'm able to then take this information and share it with people who perhaps are struggling with their weight and maybe they didn't know they had a food allergy. And
Mhm.
maybe probably their doctor never steered them in that direction.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, one of the topics that I see and have seen pop up on your own podcast a number of times have to do with mental health. You've covered a lot of different topics about mental health, and you even mentioned, that 6 months ago there was an interest in psychedelic therapy, which, while it has many different health benefits, mental health issues is
Yes.
definitely one of them. So when we talk about making American healthy, we can, of course, discuss diet, nutrition. We could discuss exercise and fitness. From my understanding, that's a big part of what you're doing with YogaFit. But what about mental health? What's going on in your work in regards to either personal education or educating your listeners on mental health?
Well, we have a lot of programming and educational workshops at YogaFit around mental health and the intersection between yoga and mental health and the vagus nerve. And we have a whole 200-hour YogaFit Warriors program, which really helps people deal with trauma, either childhood trauma or adult trauma. In fact, I wrote a whole book on it called Healing Trauma with Yoga that came out just before the pandemic, coincidentally. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, there's I was just talking with a friend about this yesterday, and we hear epigenetics, and that means that we can change the expression of what might be wired into our DNA, whether it's we have a predisposition for cancer, heart disease, or whatever. Bruce Lipton, who I presented with at the International Yoga Festival in 2020, was a master of this years ago. You can change your DNA expression. And so I said to my friend who's a psychologist, is there a terminology in psychology for the epigenetics of mental health? For example, my father was an alcoholic. My mother is a pretty angry narcissist. I have half sisters who had a lot of mental health problems. So clearly, and I've had my share of depression in my life as well. Um, so what if there was a terminology in psychology for the epigenetics of how we might be having a predisposition to bipolar or, addiction. But through healthy lifestyle choices, we can change our mental health expression. And I believe that we can because a lot of my curiosity and work is obviously very selfish, and that I've been struggling with, situational and depression throughout my life and really bad PMS and all of that. So whether it was trying plant medicine or doing ketamine at a respectable clinic, or trying different herbs and amino acids and all of that, I was able to and continue to be able to manage better mental health.
Mhm. Mhm. I find this intersection unbelievably fascinating. Part of what I do outside of my personal practice is I also run an education company, largely for continuing education for manual practitioners. And my current obsession is education on the body mind soul connection, and a very specific body mind soul. I think neglecting the existence of that forbidden word soul is to our own detriment. Nevertheless, this body mind soul connection. And my experience with my own mental health and those with my clients, not being a psychologist, is people come and see me with anxiety, with depression, with high levels of stress, and we do work on the body, and that's how we work through the mind, or work with the mind, and we work with their own mental health is exclusively by working on the body. So yeah, I would agree with you completely that the connection between the two is very obvious and essential to understand. And I'm curious, with what you do with yoga, how do you educate that? So maybe give me a little mini lesson. How does something like practice of yoga benefit somebody's mental health?
Well, I just presented at a yoga festival here in South Florida, and I did a class for yoga for anxiety and depression.
Mhm,
And they're actually two very different practices. Yoga for depression needs to be very fluid, very energizing, very uplifting. Think sun salutations, think moon flowers, think, lots of back bending because back bend poses are good for mental health. And and then the practice for anxiety needs to be much more yin yoga, restorative, calming, forward folds, cooling. Um, and there's just even a breathing technique where you exhale twice as long as you inhale, and it brings you right into your parasympathetic nervous system.
mhm, mhm. And how do you find the effects of this? Like, say for example, you're teaching a yoga class. Do you kind of like tune in with the class or do a little survey and identify, does this need to be more of the yin style, or is it more of the restorative style, or are we working more anxiety depression? How does one go about building that into what they do?
Well, typically, the class would be called what it is, whether it's yoga for mental health or yoga fit warriors or yoga for anxiety and depression. But a good way to take the temperature of the room, if you're an instructor, is just to give people different options. That's what we do at YogaFit. We give people 3 different options on each pose.
Hmm.
And if you see that people are taking the more restful option, like child's pose, it's time for you to dial it down
Hmm.
and to start with some more relaxing, calming, more deep stretching poses.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Okay. So I really appreciate this focus and connection that you have between how you facilitate and teach the improvement of mental health through the use of the body. Um, and if it's okay, I'm also curious about some of these other maybe challenges that you face when trying to spread this message, right? This message that you have of taking sovereignty over your health and making sure that we take responsibility for our own health and well-being. Now, you mentioned that there's a miseducation. The words that I often use, which are not my own, are we have a sick care system, not a healthcare
Yeah.
system. We're
Yeah.
focused on the help of the sick. So, what are the big obstacles that you are finding with your podcast, with your various companies, that that feel like an uphill battle when it comes to actually making America healthy?
Well, um, you know, if we're honest, nobody is really profiting from healthy people in this country. Unless you own a gym or you're running an IV drip place, or you're a functional medicine doctor where you can have clients who can afford your services, or acupuncture, all of that. Um, excuse me. So we're in a system that doesn't work for people's health, and we're in a system that whether it's serving poor food lunches to children, whether it's the bad hospital food that's supposed to be just one step up from prison food. The food companies are putting all kinds of chemicals and additives and glyphosate and all kinds of things you don't want to put in your body that are not allowed in Europe but are allowed in the U.S. Uh, they're profiting. Um, and then you also have the pharmaceutical companies. And I have to be careful because the pharmaceutical industry, they're actually giving me an award in April because I go to a pharmaceutical conference every year to present, which is ironic, but I like to see what everybody's up to. Um, we're a pill popping nation. So, and that's those are the profit levers. So how do you compete with that? I always say, like, being in the health and wellness business is not, if you're really looking to strike it rich, this industry is like pushing a boulder up a hill,
Hmm.
especially, in light of the past 4 years and COVID, where people have gotten radically less healthy. The average weight gain was 29 pounds, and people are having, all kinds of challenges that they didn't have before for a variety of reasons that we don't really need to discuss. But, the system is not in our favor. So people need to understand that their health is their most valuable asset always. And again, YouTube University is there. You can learn really whatever you want there. I mean, take everything with a grain of salt and do your research. And the NIH website is full of great information also. I just think that we are not conditioned to want to get healthier. And then unfortunately, there are a lot of disenfranchised people in North America who have limited resources, and it's easier to go to a fast food restaurant than it is to try to make something healthy from the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
But I would challenge that because you can make a lot of healthy meals very inexpensively.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you mentioned to me that after our call today, you're doing a coaching session, right? You've got a
Yes.
client coming in, yeah. And when you're working with your coaching clients, there's of course the education process. I'm sure whether or not it's direct education through the one-on-one coaching or they've taken a previous program. But let's assume that an individual has been through the education process and they're aware of the steps that need to be taken. How do you actually help them make those changes in their life? Because that's such a big obstacle for so many
I know.
people.
I know if we could figure out the magic pill for behavioral change,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then we'd all be very lucky. Actually, I do health coaching, but I also do a lot of small business coaching, helping um, yoga instructors and fitness people kind of build their business in their community. But what normally happens as part of the business coaching is that people are having some health challenges. Whether my next client is a woman in her mid late 50s whose doctor won't test her hormones. And she thinks she has chronic fatigue syndrome. It might be something as simple as a hormone imbalance. So I request that my clients get as many of those baseline tests as they have available to them and then they can afford, and then going to know what their vitamin levels are like, and if they're low on vitamin, like really low on vitamin D, go get a shot of vitamin D. um, so it's interesting how many times when I'm working with someone who is supposed to be a business coaching client, it ends up the health component becomes part of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And are there any patterns you see with your business clients in specific? Are there any patterns you see in regards to areas of health that they could improve?
Weight, whether they're underweight or overweight, is an issue. I see a lot of women entrepreneurs who just haven't made their health their priority, even if they have successful businesses. And they don't realize, past a certain point, eating pizza for breakfast or hanging out with a group of girls at the pool drinking 25 bottles of champagne is going to directly impact their health. So I think that some people don't care as much as they could.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who's a Western medical doctor who got breast cancer just short of being 60 years old, and then developed a Parkinson's diagnosis a few years later, but hasn't even put like a water filter in her home with reverse osmosis to get the fluoride and the bromine and the chloride and all of that other stuff out of her water. So, I've had to really learn with family members too, who are having health challenges and just go a very conventional route because of fear or that they don't know other options. I find that to be challenging personally.
Mm-hmm. What would some first steps be? Like if you could just move in and just say, here are the most rudimentary, basic baby steps a person could take to start moving towards a healthier version of themselves. What would it be?
Um, I think first steps for people, other than the baseline testing, is to clean up their diet, to try to eat as simply and clean as possible, to cook their own food whenever possible, to eat, what is local to their area, to obviously eat less, to try intermittent fasting, to try to, I'm very busy. I have probably 3 jobs right now, and I'm opening up a YogaFit studio and the Center for Conscious Healing in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in about a month. I give myself an hour a day for either a yoga class, a Pilates class, going to the gym, and that is my me time.
Hmm.
Um, so I really recommend that people give themselves an hour of movement a day that is their time for them.
Hmm.
Even, I have a dog, I walk a lot, but, even get out and walk with your dog.
Hmm. Hmm. And these are some of the same messages that I hear on your podcast, things that you're really trying to spread the word about, right? Um, what about for those who that's much more challenging? I'm just curious because I've got a fair number of clients who they've got their 10-hour day work days, and then they have the pick up the kids and make the dinner, and they got the schedule. So what do you do with the people who have legitimate, like, just slammed lives? How do they start to fit in this time per day to manage their
I
health?
I think, if they can get a wearable device and just start tracking their steps, that's a good
Hmm.
first start. I mean, I don't know too many jobs where people are literally chained to their desk 10
Hmm.
hours a day. Walking is one of the best exercises that anyone can do. And also, if one has a sedentary job, which is very challenging to one's health, you really need to eat a lot less food. You just
Hmm.
don't need that much food.
Right.
I would even
Hmm.
recommend maybe trying a 2 or 3 day fast just to kind of start the process. I recently heard of a gentleman here in South Florida that fasted for 3 months and lost about 100 pounds. Water
Wow.
only fast. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's doable. It's doable. I find it so fascinating looking into the outliers of this lovely world of health and wellness, where you get stories like somebody was fasted for 3 months. I think the most outrageous one I heard was when they were first studying the ketogenic diet, like back in the 40s or something like that. This guy ended up going almost a year. Like, I really enjoy these outlier stories because to me, it's not like the solution is everybody needs to fast for 3 months. But the message I hear when I hear something like that is we are remarkably resilient individuals,
yes,
and
we are.
the more dedicated one is to their health and wellness, the better it seems to be. And sometimes it takes these extreme steps like 3 months of no eating. But sometimes it takes a pedometer to make sure that they're taking more than 50 steps a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one needs to fall in love with movement that you love.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually driving over to our new studio this morning, and I saw some people biking. I was like, I'm so busy working. I would love to be out on my bike. I would love to be like taking my tennis lessons again. Um, but for some reason, I'm choosing work over leisure life right now, or a more sporty life. That's just because that's how I'm wired.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy to be like that. And unfortunately, our children today are not being groomed to move.
Mm-hmm.
My niece was given an iPad at 6 years old, and she's 17 now, and she stays buried in her phone for most of the time. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think our health markers are going to improve anytime soon. And if I can make a small dent in what's happening, then it's worth it to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little sad to look at the statistics, and there are things that I do sporadically, maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years, just to keep my finger on the trends, the pulse of the trends. And it is quite dour. Like you said, the statistics by 2030 are staggering. In Canada, the current statistics are that because we've got healthcare built into the government
Yes.
system, that alone is going to bankrupt our government by
Well,
2030
and
because
I was once very sick. I had a tick bite, and I was in Toronto. We had
mm,
an office in Toronto for YogaFit Canada. And I flew up because I had to, but I was already experiencing fever. And, a day into my trip, I was at 104 fever.
oh yeah.
And I love Canada, and I think it's great that you guys have healthcare. I went to a hospital in downtown Toronto where at the end of my 3 hour experience, they're not even seeing a doctor. I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to rather go back to my hotel and die.
Yeah, the weights can certainly be
Yeah,
brutal.
yeah. It was a very interesting experience, but I believe that a country that truly cares about the health of their citizens provides health care and education.
Yeah, yeah. Both I think are absolutely
Yeah.
essential.
Yeah, you really can't have one without the other.
No, no. No, I like the idea that there are very few, but some insurance companies that are starting to, health insurance companies, of course, that are starting to reverse the process. So they will pay for preventative medicine things, and then the more preventative medicine activities one participates in, the lower their premiums, which is really fascinating. Um,
And
so I love,
I think that's great too. And I'm about to say something that's
yeah,
controversial, because, it's important to have body positivity, but it's also important to not be obese or have a BMI over 33. Um, maybe the airplanes should sell tickets based upon people's weight. I mean, I'm 5'10" and I weigh 145 pounds. So, you don't get to choose your height, but you do, to a certain degree, get to choose your size.
hmm hmm
So, yeah, I think that more insurance companies should get on the health bandwagon because they would really benefit. Less claims. We do a lot of corporate wellness at YogaFit, and
hmm
employees that really care about not just their employees, the employers caring about their employees, but also caring about their insurance policies, would really benefit by offering YogaFit corporate wellness and more mind body, not just body, but body is important too,
hmm
to their employees.
yeah. Yeah, one thing that I've come to understand dealing with a variety of different clients, everything from the morbidly sick, just bedridden sick, all the way up to the professional athletes that want that extra 0.5%. It is so much easier to stay healthy than to get healthy. But those who are unhealthy, the idea of participating in these daily activities, the idea of learning how to cook healthy meals, it seems like so much work to do that every day. But my experience has been over the long term, it's way easier to do just a little bit every single day than it is to get sick and then try and climb out of that well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I've been working out in gyms since age 15, and I was fortunate I fell in love with it early on, and it became a stress release and a coping mechanism for me. Um, but sometimes if I'm hungry, I'm like, oh, should I go get something from a restaurant? But I literally, and I wrote a book on this too called Yoga Lean. You can make a meal in under 10 minutes that's super healthy, that's affordable. And you think if you're going to go to a restaurant, even fast food, like you can make something faster than the fast food.
hmm Yep, I would agree with that. Yeah,
And I
yeah,
don't
just
typically cook anything that takes me more than 10 minutes because I'm busy.
yeah. And I think an important part too is the falling in love part. And that's another obstacle is people uh, fall in love with fitness, their various activities, their sports, the meals. So one of the bits of advice I always give is what's the best activity? It's the one that you will do. What's the healthiest diet? It's the one that you'll sustain. So finding a way that it fits into their particular life that we can fit that. So with what you do with Make America Healthy and with YogaFit, I'm curious what like if you could wave your magic wand and have something happen, say 5 years from now, what would be like the perfect, uh, not the perfect, but the impact that you would have with your various companies and the endeavors that you're in?
Well, obviously, we'd like to reach more people globally. I
hmm
do a lot of work in Japan, actually in the healthcare system, with a gentleman that I met at Harvard Business School, because I like to do difficult things like go back to school at midlife. But he owns 3 hospitals. We've been training all of their employees to take care of their own health. We have a Yoga for Healthcare Providers program, but also then to bring the healthcare to the people who are not so healthy who are in the hospitals. So I'd like to see more of that happen, where we see more of an intersection of mind body wellness into the
hmm
traditional Western medical model. And, I would like to just see more people take the control back and don't,
hmm
just go to a doctor and believe everything they say, because I think like 1 out of 3 deaths in hospitals happen from, doctor error,
Mhm.
at least here in the U.S. So it's a medical practice, not medical perfection, just like it's a yoga practice and not yoga perfection. And it's good to learn things that challenge you. It makes your brain grow. It keeps you cognitively healthy as you get older.
Mhm.
Whether you're, starting up a new sport or going back to school, learning something new. I like to say when I'm teaching, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I would like to see more people get a little bit less comfortable so that they can ultimately be more comfortable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. It reminds me of the principle of being anti-fragile. It turns out that the human body and the human psyche gets stronger and more robust the more we put it through. To
Yeah.
a certain extent, I don't
Yes.
want to say it as a blanket statement, but
They're actually saying that now about childhood trauma, that a certain level of childhood trauma actually provides an incredibly resilient, impactful individual.
mm,
Too much trauma, no good. No trauma, actually not that good. So, um, yeah,
everything's a balance.
it,
Everything's a
it
balance.
is.
Yeah, yeah. Now, in your personal health journey, with all of the things I'm sure you have done over the years since you said you were 15, 16 when
Yeah,
you first went to the
15.
gym.
Yeah.
15. So you've had a long history of health and wellness. If you could think of like, what's the one thing that when you look back on your life, the one change you made that had the most outsized effect, what do you think that would be?
Wow, that's a tough one because I've done
It's
a
a tough
lot,
one.
a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
know it's a tough one.
I've traveled all over the world. I would have to say that going gluten free was a real
Mm,
big game changer for me. I went gluten free in 2012. And here in the US, we spray our wheat crops with glyphosate, which is basically Roundup, which is a pesticide, for those of you who don't know what that is. Um, that was a big game changer for me. And also, really just, through the practice of yoga and getting very intuitive with my body, even some healthy foods that are now on my no list, I kind of instinctively stayed away from. So I think that the more one practices any type of mind body exercise, does meditation, is open to trying different things, the more you're going to find out about the self, and the biggest relationship you're going to have in your life is the one with yourself. So you have to
mhm,
get very comfortable with all aspects of self, and then be, say in the 12 steps, kind of do a ruthless inventory of where you can make improvements and just make a list and start working away at it.
mhm,
Or call me for health coaching.
mhm. Yeah. Which is it's shockingly important, I think. I think that's one of the things that if I could add anything into the healthcare system, I don't think it would be making sure that everybody can receive acupuncture or massage therapy or any of the other complementary alternative medicines. I really think access to health coaches would have one of the biggest effects on individuals' health because it's so hard for people to make the change. And
And
in
listen,
theory, the
we, we,
change is
we,
easy.
we all need coaches.
Yeah, we do.
We need life coaches at times. We need a personal train. I work out with a personal trainer a couple of times a week.
Hmm.
At least I know those workouts are going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really know my way around a gym, but I'm not going to push myself as hard as somebody else is going to push me. And I want to be pushed because if I'm not getting stronger, I'm getting weaker. And if I'm not growing, I'm dying. And we're all dying
Hmm.
anyway. But um, we can be healthy,
Yeah.
we can really have an increased health span, which is different than our lifespan, which actually is shrinking also.
Hmm. So there's this question that I ask every guest that comes on the podcast, and I'm quite curious about your opinion on this. So, in your opinion, what do you think makes a practitioner of any sort, but a practitioner successful?
I would say a wide base of knowledge,
Okay.
compassion, being able to meet the client where they're at,
Hmm.
and truly loving what you do. Because
Hmm.
that's, really there's a thousand different things we can do in life for work.
Yeah.
But I believe in following your passion because it keeps you very engaged and energized in life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Now, I want to be mindful of time, so I would love to offer you the chance to share any links or any addresses or any way that people can stay in touch with you, book with you, whatever it might be?
Great. You can find me at bethshaw.com. On Instagram, I'm at Beth Shaw Health. You can go to yogafit.com if you're curious about yoga, teacher trainings, workshops, retreats, events. And of course, makeamericahealthy.com and listen to the Make America Healthy podcast. It lives anywhere podcasts live.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And before we wrap up our conversation, is there anything else that you feel like we've missed or that you would really love to talk about that we didn't dig into?
Well, my phone is just about to die, so I
Okay.
don't want to interrupt myself mid-sentence. Just, you know, for the listeners who want to get healthier, for the listeners that are healthy, we can always make improvements. And if you're passionate about learning, there's always something new to learn and to do, and that's exciting. So have fun with it all. And remember, your health is your most valuable asset.
That is a beautiful place to tie a little bow on our conversation. So thank you again for your time today, Beth. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Namaste.
Yes.
Bye. Thank you.